What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got my post-game analysis video coming out today. I'm still working on that. I'm gonna have that a little while after this video. This video, though, I'm making for you right now, hopefully quickly, because I wanted to get through a couple articles discussing the quarterback situation. As we know, I mean, it's been a topic of conversation the entire time. Was Fitzpatrick going to start the season? Would Tua start? Is he going to play at some point? And my consistent stance is that I felt Fitzpatrick would start the season, but at some time, probably early on and probably in the first half of the season, Tua will end up going in because of either injury to Fitzpatrick or because of poor performance. It looks like poor performance is going to be the more likely scenario, and not just necessarily because of him, but also because the team, right? Because the team is losing, and I know some people feel like they've been doing well, and admittedly the offense has performed a bit better than what I would have expected as well. However, there are a lot of other contextual factors that go into it that suggest pretty heavily that it would not be as good as it has been if, those factors were different. And I've given examples before. The most common one I use is, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds not being there in the Bills game. If they were, we would not have been able to attack the field as efficiently, and our production would have gone down. But anyhow, so there's plenty of reason to believe that this team has not taken as many steps forward as you would think because of those contextual factors. And here's another quick example. Next week, we play the San Francisco 49ers, who just lost to the Eagles, in this past game. Now, going into that game, I mean, I still haven't watched their games yet since Garoppolo and, Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas and Raheem Mostert have gotten hurt. And I will between now and my preview video for the game. But going into it, I'm going to, my initial thoughts is probably going to be, some opportunities for the Dolphins, some chances, some room for them to operate and whatever. I wouldn't have necessarily thought that if they didn't lose all those guys, right? So, in other words, if they still had Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas, I'm pretty sure that our offense wouldn't do as well as it's likely to do. Conversely, if they would have had, on the other side of the ball, if they'd have, Raheem Mostert and Jimmy Garoppolo, their offense probably would do better than what it will do against, anyone really, but us in particular next week than what they would, right? So, but you never know, right? So, and unfortunately, again, this season is so massively fucked up that it is just impossible really to predict. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into that. So, or get into the topic, though, of conversation. So, we are now 1-3, and the fact of the matter is the Dolphins just really have not performed all that great. Because even in, the somewhat surprising performances by the offensive line and offense, right, overall the team is still lost. They haven't really put up all that great numbers. They're not scoring that much, et cetera, right? So, and the defense overall has been pretty bad. And last game in particular, which I'll get to in my post-game analysis video, there was some terrible coaching as well. So, look, they still have a very, very long way to go. And regardless, this season is super difficult to evaluate. But anyway, as you guys know, I would not put Tua Tagovailoa in no matter what. And I'm going to give Brian Flores some credit for some of the things that he says, some of the quotes he has in this article by Alan Poupar from Sports Illustrated. But I'm pretty sure I mean, it's like I said, I believe that Tua is going to go in at some point. So he can say these things, but it doesn't matter if he then, puts him in anyway. All right, let's get into this article. Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores' Zoom media session Monday started with a point-blank question as to who his starting quarterback will be for the team's next game next Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers. It was followed by a long pause by Flores, who typically has answered those questions very quickly and decisively by saying it would be Ryan Fitzpatrick. So stop right there for just a second. The fact that that is different, I mean, I haven't seen all of these interviews or whatever myself personally, but I have, certainly, I've seen some of them, and so there is certainly reason to believe that, all of them, even the ones that I had missed, previously over the past few weeks, he was pretty consistent with stating Ryan Fitzpatrick would be the starter. And the pause does mean something, right? Now, it could ultimately mean nothing because, it could be like he says, and that, he was just pausing to think about, some other things, whatever. Like, he gives an explanation for it. It could mean something. It could mean nothing. But it is a part of the contextual information that does need to be taken into account, because those types of things do help you in the evaluation of what's real, right? So, but Fitzpatrick is coming off a 2-interception performance in the 31-23 loss against the Seattle Seahawks, where the Dolphins had to settle for 5 field goals after moving the ball inside the opposing 30-yard line. And that's part of what I'll get into, is to show why even the offense is not, even as good as it seems like they might be, in my post-game analysis video from the Seattle Seahawks, because they just couldn't, they were moving the ball all right, but like Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll and, Bill Belichick and several others have always said, and he said in particular before the game, we'll give up yards, we don't care about that, it's the points. And the fact that they couldn't get in the end zone until it didn't fucking matter, it says a lot, right? So, and it, particularly against a defense who actually has been struggling in certain areas that we should have been able to take advantage of. But additionally, he threw 2 interceptions, but really should have thrown 4. There were 2 interceptions that were dropped by the Seattle defense that went right into their hands. So that's going to be also part of the contextual information that I give in the post-game analysis video for why the game should have actually probably been more one-sided, and in actuality it was more one-sided, and the Dolphins didn't perform as well as it would seem based off of let's say just the face value of the box score. Let's see, I mean, look, and this, hold on. After what happened Sunday when the team's record moved to 1-3 on the season, wait. I'm sorry, back up a little more. And of course, the Dolphins selected Tua Tagovailoa with the 5th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft for him to become their franchise quarterback. After what happened Sunday when the team's record moved to 1-3 on the season, there were renewed calls both from fans and the media to put Tagovailoa in the lineup. I mean, look, we're still, and this is from Brian Flores, I mean, look, we're still going through corrections of the game from yesterday, Flores said. As a staff, we normally kind of start talking about this evening. Pause. He annotates that there was a pause there. I thought we moved the ball pretty efficiently yesterday, and that's true. They did all right. I mean, it wasn't, stellar, spectacular. Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, they definitely need to dominate in ways that they haven't been, and they definitely need to improve in the run game still. But, they were moving the ball all right. The problem was they couldn't score to save their fucking life. They got a touchdown eventually in like the last 2 minutes of the game when it didn't fucking matter because they were down by 2 scores. Not just 2 scores, but 16 points. So they would have had to score 2 touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions simply just to tie it. So, anyway, continuing on, let's see. So look, I understand where everybody's coming from with Tua. I get all that. At the same time, he's a young player. He's coming off the injury. We'll make the decision on the starter. I mean, I would presume it's going to be Fitzpatrick. And so I'm going to start giving him a little bit of credit. He says a little bit more that you'll see in a bit that he gets more credit for because I believe as I've said, he should not go in at all. And it's the injury that's the most important. Let me actually continue on, and then I'll say what I had to say, because his other comments are important. The use of the word presume is in and of itself a less than definitive declaration, and we can't help, fair or unfair, but think back to October of last season. So, I mean, he is right, though, to point out the contextual information there, right? The fact that he paused and he used the word presume instead of, definitively saying it was going to be Fitzpatrick, those things are important because it shows at the very least that there are questions within his own head, right? And so that there could be a change. But, as he is going to note here, there is a little bit of precedent. After Fitzpatrick came off the bench to replace an ineffective Josh Rosen and almost brought the Dolphins back from a 17-3 deficit, Flores said after the game that Rosen was still the starter. 3 days later, at his Wednesday press conference, Flores was asked about his quarterback position again and announced Fitzpatrick would become the starter. So there's a precedent there. And then, of course, Flores' hesitation Monday caught the media's attention. The pause was, "We haven't even gone through the corrections on the game," Flores said. "We're actually in the middle of that right now," which is probably true. It is Monday after the game, and that is probably true. That is generally what Monday is for, to, go over Sunday's game, and then, the next day, whether it be Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how they do their practices. Oftentimes Tuesday is then an off day. Wednesday, then they will go in and start working on their next opponent. So he is, likely right about that. I would assume that. And so that is a fair point. Let's see. It wasn't based off anything in the game. I hope you guys don't take that the wrong way. But every week we come in Monday evening after we make all the corrections. And look, just real quick again, it is important to note simply because there was a change in his attitude and his demeanor and his decisiveness about it. And that is an important contextual piece of information to keep in mind. But every week we come in Monday evening after we make all the corrections. Look, we're a quarter of the way through the season right now. We're obviously going to do an evaluation of our team from that standpoint. Try to plan the guys we feel are going to help us try to turn things around. Play better in situations like red zone and 2-minute and fourth quarter. That will be at all positions. So even a lot of that stuff does even give you the sense that there could be an imminent switch at quarterback coming. That was kind of a conversation we just had as a staff. I guess that's what gave me some pause, not something from the game. We just talked about reevaluating everything, every position, every grouping. And when coaches say, when they take that broad perspective of, to a very, very direct question like that, it often means that, yes, there is a change coming. Often. Not always, but often. Because if a coach is like, especially when it comes to like quarterback, or a premier position or a premier player, if they're going to say, hey, are you guys going to make a switch at quarterback? And he's like, well, we're evaluating every position to see what, is best. That's a very, beat around the bush way of saying probably, right? But, it hasn't been decided yet, so we'll have to wait and see. We always do that after every quarter, and moving forward, do the things we've been doing well and try to build on those and obviously improve on the things where we haven't had as much success. Tagovailoa, of course, is coming off a severe hip injury last November that cut short his brilliant career at the University of Alabama, but he has not appeared on the Dolphins injury report since the week of the season opener at New England, which was apparently with just an illness. Flores said Monday that Tagovailoa has checked all the boxes from a medical standpoint, but then Flores added, look, the honest thing for me is if it was my kid and he had a serious injury like that, I wouldn't want his coach to rush to throw him in there because of media pressure or anything like that. That's kind of how I approach this situation and really all situations. With the players, essentially they are my kids, so no one is going to pressure me into doing anything. If we feel like he's ready to go, we'll put him in. There's 2 points I want to make there. One is negative credit, one is positive credit. To the very same comments, right? So one, I love that he considers his players his kids, but if that was really the case, then he wouldn't have treated Kenny Stills the way he did and sided with the white male racist billionaire owner over Kenny Stills, and he certainly wouldn't have been a fucking child and, played fucking Jay-Z songs in the fucking, to taunt him, in the locker room to taunt him. I mean, and then trade him, right? So there's that. I'm not going to forget about that, because it's important and it shouldn't be forgotten. But having said that, In this case, that's not actually relevant to this particular conversation. So within this context, depending on what he eventually does, I mean, if he doesn't play Tua at all the rest of the season, then I'm going to give him a ton of credit for that and for these comments. If he eventually plays him, then, and especially if he plays him this upcoming week, then it really gets kind of negated, to be honest with you, especially if he plays him this week. Every week that he goes without playing him lends more credibility to his comments, but if he plays him now this week, then the comments are pretty much irrelevant, right? But I like that because in particular, I like the part where he says, if it was my kid and he had a serious injury like that, I wouldn't want his coach to rush to throw him in there because the media pressure or anything like that. Abso-fucking-lutely. That is 100% the right answer. Now he needs to, live up to that and take that action, right? So, because, look, I mean, even if he's checked off all the boxes and so on and so forth, it is still super fresh. It is still a massively serious injury. The season is totally fucked up from a million different perspectives. And just the one wrong hit can be the ender there. Just let him not to mention, right, because he still needs to get adjusted to the NFL, right? He hasn't taken any snaps yet. He's still, I would presume, still learning some aspects of the playbook, or at least getting more and more, familiar and consistent with it. Let him adjust to the NFL. Let him take the first year to redshirt and get, literally as healthy as possible, and then, put him in next year or whatever. Right? But don't do it this year. Don't take that chance. It's an unnecessary risk. And if you're wrong and something does happen to him, I mean, that's just, beyond disaster. So with Flores saying that Tagovailoa has checked all the medical boxes and Tua not being on the injury report, it would seem to suggest that one concern now is how Tua's hip would respond to being hit. And that should be a concern. But the argument there is that this particular concern always will be there until Tagovailoa actually gets hit. And that is also true. But additionally, it is also true that no matter what, his injury concerns overall are going to always be there for the rest of his career, no matter what at this point, because of the fact that he has had such a significant injury history. Additionally, it is also true that until he, gets in, takes his first hit, plays a full game, plays another full game, and another, and another, and another, without any serious injuries, it's going to stay, in the forefront of people's minds, or at least it should, right? Yeah, anyway, there's also the question of how ready Tagovailoa is to perform at a high level in the NFL. And if he's not, and if he hesitates at all, that could get him hit, and that could cause him to have an injury, especially in a year where injuries are so rampant, right? Just do not take that chance. That's my opinion. Sure, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert have been impressive for the Bengals and Chargers, respectively, over the past month, but Flores says that's irrelevant, and I totally agree. What does that have to do with anything? Totally different teams, totally different players, with totally different coaches. There's absolutely nothing that's the same. It just isn't. There's no comparison. To say, oh, but look at Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. It doesn't fucking matter. No, it's 100% irrelevant. So more credit to him. No, I think every player is different. Every situation is different. 100% accurate. So as much as I dislike the dude, it's totally the case. No, I really don't. But again though, he can say this all he wants. If he ends up playing Tua at all this year, depending on what point that is, he will get a certain amount of credit. If it happens to be this game against the San Francisco 49ers, he'll get pretty much no credit, because then he will have immediately turned around and contradicted the things that he had said, right? No, I really don't look at other players. I don't play the comparison game, players or really anyone. We're going to do what we feel is best for the Dolphins and for the individual players. Now, a lot of that is, pretty typical coach speak, but that is 100% true. The situations are right, because not only are the quarterbacks different, not only is Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert totally different quarterbacks than Tua Tagovailoa, but they have entirely different offensive lines. They have entirely different skill position players, entirely different defenses, right? Some of those teams are winning, some of them are not, right? So you cannot compare those situations. Not only that, but those other two quarterbacks don't have the injury history that Tua does. So way different scenarios. Let's see. Tua or Fitz or Austin Jackson or Robert Hunt or whoever it happens to be, it's all case by case. We don't look at other situations and make decisions off of what other people are doing. We try to do what's best for us. We'll make decisions with that in mind. And I agree with all of that. And the decision at quarterback will be finalized at some point before the Dolphins start their preparations for the San Francisco 49ers, and then we'll know whether we have arrived at Tua time or whether Tua time will have to wait a while longer. And that's true. I mean, we will know, for this week at a minimum, we will know. But it's like I said, either Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to end up getting hurt, although I do think that is less likely, in part because the offensive line has played better than what I would have expected. There is the contextual information of the defenses, we've played, having missed lots of people. The Patriots defense was entirely different than last year. Bills missing a couple of their key linebackers, etc. Like the Seattle Seahawks yesterday were missing Jamal Adams, right? And that's another thing about yesterday's game. I'll get into that later. If they had Jamal Adams and Jordan Brooks and Quentin Dunbar, I mean, and if they didn't make some of the mistakes that, were just self-inflicted, miscommunications, overthrows, dropped passes, dropped interceptions, I'm pretty sure the Dolphins wouldn't have even scored 23 points. Anyway, we'll get to that in the other video. But because there's one more article from CBS that I want to read that is right along these same lines. So, Tua time, ? Ryan Fitzpatrick realizes it's inevitable that rookie will be taking over as Dolphins quarterback soon. That's the headline. Miami Dolphins fans are officially getting antsy, wondering where Tua Tagovailoa when he will replace Ryan Fitzpatrick under center. I'm not. I hope that they don't. I think it will be a massive mistake, especially in such a injury-riddled season. I think it's a disaster potentially in the making, and I wouldn't want to take the risk. Anyway, this is a development we have all been expecting for quite some time now, but when this decision will actually be made is still up in the air. Despite an impressive Week 3 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Dolphins fell to the Seattle Seahawks Sunday 31-23. And it definitely was not even that close. When you take all information and data into account, the stats, the numbers, the fucking the tape and performance, the injuries, the fucking all of that stuff. The 1-3 Dolphins are now in third place in the AFC East, and now that we are officially a quarter of the way through the 2020 season, this week could be the perfect time to make the change under center. During a virtual press conference on Monday, Dolphins head coach Brian Flores wouldn't necessarily commit to Fitzpatrick as the Dolphins starter when they travel to take on the San Francisco 49ers next week, since he says his staff still has to discuss the current state of the franchise. We are a quarter of the way through the season now, Flores said, according to Adam Beasley. We're going to do an evaluation of all positions to turn the season around. Flores did say, however, that he assumes Fitzpatrick would retain the role of starting quarterback, according to Beasley. In 4 games this season, Fitzpatrick has thrown for 994 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. The veteran signal caller knows that his job security is a week-to-week proposition and spoke about that on the Peter King podcast recently. He's a very interesting guy, Fitzpatrick told King about Tagovailoa via Pro Football Talk. He asks a lot of good questions, good football questions when we're in the meeting room or even on the sideline during a game. You can tell that he's very smart in that regard, football smart. I think he's probably a little bit of an older soul, just in terms of some of the stuff that he's into and some of the discussions we can have. It's been a lot of fun getting to know him. He's got a lively personality that makes everybody smile around the building. I know my job security really for me is a week-to-week proposition. I've got to go out there and prove it every single week. With Tua just being able to slow slow down sometimes to be able to take the extra minute to explain something, my thought process, or to sit on the bench during a game and instruct and talk and answer questions. That stuff is maybe a little bit different than how it would go normally. But I know what my role is. I know that I'm keeping the seat warm for him. I know that I know the talent that he has, and I'm excited whenever he gets his opportunity. I feel like I'm going to play a big part in that. Tagovailoa was taken with the number 5th overall pick in the 2020 draft. While he suffered a serious hip injury just 11 months ago, the former Alabama star has apparently made a full recovery. The thing is, Flores admitted that he's not necessarily in a rush to throw him out on the field. Which, of course, as I said, I love. Miami's next 2 games are on the road and on the other side of the country, as the Dolphins take on the 49ers this Sunday and the Broncos the next week. Fitzpatrick isn't too far removed from his win against the Jaguars, where he completed 90% of his passes for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns while rushing for another touchdown. So maybe he will keep the starting role for now. After this brief road trip, the Dolphins then return to Miami to host the Los Angeles Chargers and potentially rookie quarterback Justin Herbert in Week 7. If it's not here in Week 5, maybe Week 7 at home is where we could see Tagovailoa take over as Miami's new starting quarterback. I don't know. Like I said, my prediction is that it will happen at some point during the season, as I said, either due to injury or performance, and unfortunately, not just, Fitzpatrick's performance, but also the team's performance, which is not all on Fitzpatrick, of course, but, it will be one of those two things. At this point, it seems more likely the performance thing, and additionally, I don't think he should go in, but it will, likely happen at some point. And so we'll just have to wait and see when that is, if it's this week, if it's next week, the week after, whatever. Obviously, everything is week to week, and it just has to play out as it plays out. All right, with that, I'm going to get up out of here, and I'm going to get to finishing my post-game analysis video for you on the Jags, and then I will get that out for you as well. So I'm going to bounce and get to that. I hope you guys appreciate my perspectives. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.